Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're plunging into something that really shook things up last week. President Trump's 50-day ultimatum to Russia over Ukraine, issued July 14th.
Yeah, it's definitely a headline grabber, a really sudden, kind of jarring shift, you could say.
Totally. And it seems to boil down to two main things, right? First, these incredibly harsh sanctions.
100% tariffs on Russia, and importantly, on anyone still trading heavily with them. Think China, India.
Wow, okay. And second, more weapons for Ukraine.
That's right. Specifically, those very expensive Patriot missile systems funneled through NATO allies.
So the big question we're trying to figure out today is this for real? A genuine push for peace? Or is it maybe just a really dangerous bluff?
And what are the hidden costs, not just globally, but, for folks listening right here at home?
Exactly.
And that's what we're digging into. We're drawing from this analysis Trump's Ukraine ultimatum, a perilous gamble. It really tries to pull apart these exact questions.
So our mission is to kind of cut through the noise for you, give you the key insights.
Precisely. Help you quickly grasp what's going on, the complexities, the potential fallout from this very bold move.
Okay, let's get into it. Unpack this ultimatum. Now look, on the surface, it sounds decisive. A clear demand. Peace now.
It does sound that way.
But the source we're looking at suggests maybe it's more performance than actual policy. Why? What makes people think it might be a bluff?
Well, the analysis points to a few things. First off, that 50-day deadline, it feels, well, a bit arbitrary, doesn't it?
Yeah, where did 50 days come from?
Exactly. And you saw Russian officials like Senator Kosachev pretty much immediately call it a fake ultimatum.
Okay, so they're not taking it too seriously, maybe.
That dismissal coming so quickly, it suggests they might just see it as political theater rather than a credible starting point for talks.
Interesting. What else?
Then there's Russia's economy. It's shown it can actually handle sanctions surprisingly well, partly because it keeps selling oil, right, to places like China and India.
Right. So hitting China and India with 100% tariffs. That sounds like it could backfire on the U.S. relationship-wise.
Hugely. The analysis specifically mentions India. Damaging that relationship could undermine other U.S. goals, like, balancing China's influence in Asia. It's tricky.
Very tricky. And what about Trump actually doing this? He says he doesn't need Congress for these tariffs. Is that realistic?
Well, the source uses the word shaky.
Shaky. Okay.
Yeah, implying that legally imposing massive tariffs like that usually does need lawmakers or some kind of international agreement. It's not typically something a president can just decree unilaterally, certainly not on this scale.
So a potential legal hurdle there, too.
Definitely. And then there's the why behind it all, the timing. The source suggests this might be less about a well-thought-out strategy and more of reaction, maybe frustration over his own past peace efforts not working out.
Especially since Russia still holds, 20% of Ukraine? And seems to think it's winning.
Right. And get this, the Russian markets actually went up a bit after the announcement.
Seriously. That doesn't sound like fear.
Not really. Plus, there's speculation he might just, push the deadline back later. He's done that before, which makes it seem less like a firm red line and more like, loud talk.
Okay, that paints a pretty clear picture of why some see it as a bluff. But let's switch to the other part, the weapons. Sending Patriots via NATO. Even if allies pay, what's the risk? Those things are crazy expensive.
They really are. The cost is staggering, like $1 billion for one battery.
$1 billion, wow.
And each missile,
Yeah.
$7 to $10 million. And often you need to fire two just to be sure you hit one incoming target.
So the costs just multiply.
Exactly. And even if NATO allies are footing the bill for the hardware transfer, the U.S. is the one making these things, producing them, storing them. It puts a huge strain on our own defense industrial base, our own readiness.
And we've already sent a lot of aid, haven't we?
A massive amount. The source says $66.9 billion in military aid since 2022. And get this, $31.7 billion of that came straight out of existing U.S. stockpiles.
$31 billion from our own reserves.
Yeah. It's why Defense Secretary Hegseth actually paused some arms shipments just recently, in July 2025, because of worries about depleting our own stocks. Trump's new plan seems to just ignore that concern.
Okay, so there's a real strain on our own supplies. What about escalation?
That's the other huge risk. Sending really advanced systems, especially ones that could potentially hit deep inside Russia, Well, that could easily make things much worse.
Has Ukraine said they'd use them that way?
President Zelensky has been quite open about it, yeah. He's mentioned striking Moscow or St. Petersburg if they had the capability.
Which Russia would obviously see as a major provocation.
Absolutely. It could trigger a much stronger Russian response, maybe even dragging the U.S. deeper into the fight, which, kind of clashes with Trump's America First idea of avoiding foreign wars.
Right. It feels contradictory.
And if Russia sees these weapons coming, they might just ramp up their attacks now before the Patriots even arrive, trying to gain ground before peace talks even have a chance.
So it could actually hinder peace efforts instead of helping.
It's a real possibility, according to the analysis.
Okay, so it's not just the money. It's strategic risk, depleting our own stuff. What does the source say about replacing these weapons? How hard is that for us?
It's incredibly hard and slow. Patriots aren't just expensive, they take a long time to build. The supply chains are already stretched.
So giving them away, even if NATO pays for the transfer, leaves us potentially vulnerable.
Exactly. Vulnerable to other threats, potential flare-ups with China over Taiwan or issues in the Middle East. We need those systems for our own defense, too.
It sounds like we've faced this issue before.
We have. The source points out the Biden administration actually stopped extra Patriot transfers for this very reason, worried about readiness. It's a concern this new plan doesn't really seem to address.
And replacing them takes years, billions.
Both. Years to build, billions to pay for. It's a major long-term hit to our own military capability.
What about Trump's claim that selling weapons makes money? He bragged about $10 billion.
Yeah, the source tackles that. It says, okay, maybe $10 billion in sales, but that's relatively small compared to the total cost of supporting Ukraine and the massive expense of rebuilding America's own diminished stockpiles.
So it's not really a profit-making venture overall.
Not when you factor in the replenishment cost and the time it takes. Plus, building new ones takes years, leaving allies potentially waiting and vulnerable too.
Okay, this military and strategic angle is, well, sobering. But the source also brings it right back home, doesn't it? Talking about ignoring problems here in the U.S.
It really does. That's a major theme in the analysis, the opportunity cost.
Opportunity cost, meaning the money spent there could be used here.
Precisely. The argument highlighted is that this intense focus on Ukraine, billions of dollars, feels like it's happening while pressing issues at home get less attention.
Like what kind of issues?
Infrastructure that needs fixing, gaps in healthcare, economic worries, border security. The list goes on.
So that billion-dollar Patriot battery.
Yeah, think about what else $1 billion could do. Fund hospitals, schools, maybe disaster relief for Americans hit by hurricanes or floods. The source draws a pretty stark contrast. That $66.9 billion sent to Ukraine since 2022 is way more than we've invested in many of those domestic areas. And that causes frustration.
I can imagine. People see needs in their own communities.
Exactly. And even though there's this NATO plan for them to spend more on defense, 5% of GDP by 2035, that's going to squeeze European budgets too. It might mean cuts to their social programs.
So even Trump pushing allies to pay more doesn't solve the core issue for Americans worried about priorities.
Not really. For many Americans struggling with high prices or housing costs, the analysis suggests the bigger concern is just why our resources are so focused overseas, especially risking conflict with a nuclear power like Russia.
And isn't that something even some of his own supporters have worried about? Like Vice President Vance.
That's right. The source notes that even within his own camp, figures like J.D. Vance have been vocal about avoiding foreign entanglements. So there's not universal agreement even there.
Okay, so pulling it all together, it sounds like this ultimatum, this whole plan, it's not just a gamble for Trump, but for NATO too. A really dangerous game.
That's exactly how the analysis frames it, a multifaceted gamble. Giving Ukraine these advanced weapons, threatening these huge sanctions, it might actually push Putin to double down, not back off.
Has he shown any sign of backing down?
Not at all. He dismissed the ultimatum. The drone and missile attacks on Ukraine are continuing. There's no sign of de-escalation from the Russian side.
So the risks for the U.S. are pretty numerous.
Yeah. Running low on key weapons we need ourselves, potentially alienating important partners like India, neglecting problems here at home, and maybe, just maybe, stumbling closer to a direct clash with Russia.
And the source's bottom line?
Pretty blunt. It calls the 50-day threat big talk with little chance of working, and sending more advanced weapons right now. A bad move.
Wow.
The core message coming out of the analysis is really a plea to shift focus back towards serious peace talks, rather than moves that seem likely to escalate the conflict further.
This has definitely given us a lot to think about. It leaves us with a big question, really, for you listening. In this world where everything's so connected, how do we balance our role on the global stage with the very real needs and challenges people face right here?
It's that fundamental tension, isn't it? How do foreign policy choices made by leaders impact your life, your priorities? What does security really mean? And how do we achieve it both abroad and at home, especially when the costs and risks are so high? Something to really mull over.